The Holy Bible may preach peace, but when it is Christendom itself that is threatened, then it is every Christian's duty to defend all that is holy. His Holiness the Pope has called a crusade to reclaim the Holy Lands from the infidel, who would deny Christian pilgrims their right to visit the holy places. It is time for the armies of Christendom to put aside their differences and unite under one banner, the sign of the cross, and give back God's children what is rightfully theirs, or die trying.
By the late 11th century, the Christian and Muslim worlds had been in conflict for centuries. In the east, the Byzantine Empire faced mounting threats from the Seljuk Turks, who had won a decisive victory at the Battle of Massacre in 1071, leading to the loss of key Byzantine territories in Anatolia. However, in 1092, the great Sultan Malik Shah died, dividing his great empire. Despite this, Byzantine Emperor Alexios I Komnenos was unable to regain his lost lands, so he sought help from Pope Urban II. Pope Urban II saw an opportunity to unite the Christians under a holy cause. At the Council of Clermont in 1095, he called for a campaign to reclaim Jerusalem, offering remission of sins to those who took up the cross. The enthusiastic crowd responded with cries of Deus lo vult, God wills it. By this, Pope Urban II planned the departure of the Crusade for August 1096. Nevertheless, a man called Peter the Hermit played a central role in inspiring the peasants, minor knights, and commoners, set off for Jerusalem in 1096. In the road, they made brutal pogroms against Jews in the Rhineland. Upon reaching Constantinople, Emperor Alexios I Komnenos, confused by the unusual army, quickly ferried them across the Bosporus by August 6th. Against Byzantine advice, they decided to fight the Turks. They captured Nicaea. However, an argument erupted between the Germans and Italians, and the French, which divided the army. The French force advanced, and were very close to Nicaea, while the Germans captured Zerigordos. However, the Seljuks besieged the city and recaptured it. Meanwhile, Peter the Hermit had gone to Constantinople for supplies. On October 21st, over 20,000 Crusaders marched toward Nicaea. Kili Arslan's army prepared an ambush for the Crusaders in a narrow valley. As the Crusaders advanced noisily, they were quickly subjected to a devastating hail of arrows, and a massacre began. Over 60,000 Crusaders, including many non-combatants, were slaughtered. About 3,000 managed to escape and return to Constantinople. After the disaster of the People's Crusade, Sultan Kilij Arslan, who believed the danger had passed, went east to fight the Danish Mends. But in May 1097, 35,000 Crusaders marched from Constantinople towards Nicaea, led by Godfrey of Bouillon, Bohemond of Taranto, Bohemond's nephew Tancred, Raymond IV of Toulouse, and Robert II of Flanders following him, along with Peter the Hermit. They surrounded Nicaea by land, while the Byzantines from the lake. The defenders resisted fiercely. On May 16th, the Turkish defenders attacked the Crusaders, but were defeated in a skirmish with the loss of 200 men. The defenders urged Kilij Arslan to return, and when he realized the strength of the Crusaders, he quickly turned back. As Kilij Arslan returned with reinforcements, he immediately attacked the enemy from the south. After one entire day of fighting, Kilij Arslan decided to leave the city to face its fate. The Crusaders pressed the siege. To terrify the enemy, Crusaders hurled decapitated heads over the battlements. The defenders responded by hanging Latin corpses from the towers. However, Emperor Alexios secretly negotiated the city's surrender. The emperor promised to spare the life of the garrison. On June 19, 1097, Byzantine flags raised in the city. Nicaea's fall shattered the myth of Seljuk invincibility and marked the first major victory of the First Crusade. Kilij Arslan's fatal miscalculation would haunt him for years to come. Following the fall of Nicaea in late June 1097, the Crusader army resumed its march through the harsh plains of Phrygia. To ease the strain of logistics, the force was divided into two columns, the vanguard led by Bohemond of Taranto and key nobles, followed a day later by a stronger rearguard under Godfrey of Bouillon and Raymond of Toulouse. As Bohemond's contingent reached near the ruins of Dorylaeum by the night of June 30th, the Crusaders camped beside the Timbres River. At dawn, Kilij Arslan launched a surprise assault on the Crusader vanguard led by Bohemond near Dorylaeum. The Turkish horse archers, swift and elusive, encircled the camp, unleashing a relentless barrage of arrows. Bohemond quickly gathered his men and non-combatants into a defensive formation, dismounting to create a shield wall while messengers were dispatched to summon aid. The Crusaders endured hours of torment under the searing Anatolian sun, their horses and unarmored men falling in great numbers. By midday, reinforcements under Godfrey of Bouillon began arriving, followed later by Raymond of Toulouse and Adhemar of Le Puy, who flanked the Turkish forces and struck from the rear. Overwhelmed and demoralized, the Turks fled the battlefield. The Crusaders, though bloodied, secured a critical victory on their march through Anatolia. The Crusader victory at Dorylaeum proved decisive. Having underestimated the Crusader threat, Kilij Arslan was forced into retreat. The Seljuks resorted to scorched earth tactics, destroying villages and crops, yet this failed to halt their momentum. With Anatolia's interior left vulnerable, the Crusaders marched towards the Cilician gates. This success opened a secure corridor toward the Levant. Meanwhile, Byzantine forces gradually reasserted control over western Anatolia. In 1098, Baldwin of Boulogne traveled east to Edessa. There, he was adopted by the city's Armenian ruler, Thoros, as his heir. Thoros, unpopular among his subjects, was soon removed, either by assassination or forced abdication. Baldwin succeeded him, establishing the First Crusader State, the county of Edessa. Following their hard-fought victories in Anatolia, the Crusader forces pressed deeper into the Levant, advancing steadily toward Antioch, the ancient and formidable city that had once served as a capital of Roman Syria. Antioch in 1097 was under the control of the Seljuk governor, Yagi Siyan. By the autumn of 1097, the Crusader approached the northern plains outside the city reinforced by massive stone walls, hundreds of towers, and crowned by a citadel atop Mount Silpius. Yagi Siyan imprisoned the Greek Orthodox Patriarch, expelled many Christians. The Crusaders, weakened by months of travel and battle, hesitated to launch a direct assault, and instead began besieging the city. By early February 1098, the siege had dragged on for over 3 months. The Crusaders faced mounting challenges: dwindling food supplies, harsh winter weather, and a growing number of desertions due to starvation and disease. Despite several foraging missions and attempts to cut off Antioch's communication and supply lines, the Crusaders had not yet breached the city. News soon arrived of an approaching Muslim relief army under Radwan of Aleppo. In response, Bohemond of Taranto led a select force out from the main camp to confront the threat before it could reach the city. On the 9th of February, 1098, near the shores of the Lake of Antioch, the Crusaders launched a surprise assault against Radwan's army. Despite being outnumbered, the disciplined and aggressive charge of the Crusader cavalry routed the Muslim forces, who fled in disarray. In April 1098, an embassy from the Fatimid Caliphate arrived at the Crusader camp outside Antioch. The Egyptians, enemies of the Seljuks, sought to negotiate peace, assuming the Crusaders to be Byzantine agents. The Fatimids offered Syria in exchange for a promise not to threaten Palestine. However, the Crusaders, determined to seize Jerusalem, rejected any settlement that did not include the Holy City. As the siege dragged into its 7th month, rumors of an approaching army under Kerboga, the powerful emir of Mosul, further intensified the crisis. Determined to take Antioch before Kerboga's arrival, Bohemond of Taranto activated a secret arrangement with Firuz, an Armenian guard of the city. On the night of June 2nd, Bohemond and a small force scaled the Tower of the Two Sisters and opened a gate, allowing Crusader troops to pour in. Antioch fell in a brutal and chaotic assault. Yagi Sian, the city's commander, fled but was captured and beheaded. By June 3rd, the Crusaders controlled most of the city except for the citadel, which remained in the hands of Yagi Sian's son, Shams ad-Dawla. However, just days after capturing Antioch, 40,000 Muslim relief force under the command of Kerboga Emir of Mosul, including contingents from Aleppo, Homs and Sinjar, encamped around Antioch. Shams ad-Dawla provided Kerboga with a foothold within the city walls. On 7th June, Kerboga launched an assault in coordination with the citadel garrison. But the attack failed with horrible losses on both sides. So instead decided to strave the Crusaders. Food supplies were exhausted, disease spread rapidly, and morale plummeted. Contemporary sources like William of Tyre and Ibn al-Athir describe scenes of despair. Knights eating horseflesh, the weak turning to carrion and leaves, and some considering surrender. The situation became so dire that envoys were dispatched to Kerboga to beg for terms. His reply was blunt: "You will leave only by the sword." Amid this desperate situation, on the 10th of June, a priest named Peter Bartholomew claimed that St. Andrew had appeared to him in a vision, revealing the location of the Holy Lance buried beneath the Church of St. Peter in Antioch. The discovery on the 14th of June of a metal lance head was hailed as a miracle. Whether real or staged, it boosted morale. Meanwhile, Kerboga faced distrust from his allies, who feared he sought personal power in Syria. This disunity weakened his coalition. Finally, on the morning of June 28, 1098, the Crusaders emerged from the battered city walls in 6 battle regiments under the command of Bohemond of Taranto. At this moment, Wathab ibn Mahmud, a seasoned commander in Kerboga's army, urged a rapid offensive to strike the Crusaders while they were still vulnerable and emerging in waves. Yet Kerboga hesitated. Believing he still held the upper hand, he dismissed the warning and allowed the enemy to fully deploy. However, as the Crusaders assembled and advanced with more determination than expected, Kerboga realized the danger. He sent emissaries to propose a truce, but the offer was ignored. As the battle intensified, morale among Kerboga's ranks began to crumble. The Crusaders, fighting to their last drop of blood, cut down Muslim men. A Muslim chronicler wrote, The Franks, though they were in the extremity of weakness, advanced in battle order against the armies of Islam, which were at the height of their strength and numbers, and they broke the ranks of the Muslims and scattered their multitudes. Meanwhile, many of the emirs under Kaboga, sensing the tide turning, began to desert one by one. And finally the Muslim coalition was crushed and soon began to retreat in disarray, fleeing in all directions. The Crusaders pursued the fleeing Turks as far as the Iron Bridge, cutting down many in the rout. Following the brutal Siege of Antioch in June 1098, the road to Jerusalem is now opened. However, the Crusaders were left weakened by hunger, disease, and continuous skirmishes. By November, the remaining Crusader forces, led by Raymond IV of Toulouse and Bohemond of Taranto, turned their attention south toward Ma'arat al-Numan, a fortified Syrian city of strategic importance along the route to the Holy City. In July, Raymond Pile d'Alès led an unsuccessful expedition against Ma'arat, suffering heavy losses. However, by December, with Antioch secured and reinforcements arriving, the Crusaders returned in force. As they approached the city, desperation gripped the army. The city's defenders, confident in their city's strong fortifications, and a determined militia composed of townspeople and local fighters. On November 28th, Raymond and Robert launched a direct assault, but the attack was repelled. Later that day, Bohemond of Taranto joined with reinforcements and tried a second charge, equally unsuccessful. Though poorly provisioned and facing the onset of winter, the Crusaders were unwilling to abandon the siege. They began constructing siege engines, including a wooden tower to approach and scale the walls. For over 2 weeks, both sides engaged in intense skirmishes. The Crusaders attempted negotiations, but the defenders refused. According to Muslim chronicler Ibn al-Athir, the people of Ma'arat fought bravely with severe resistance and steadfast defense. However, on the night of December 11th, fear and panic spread among the defenders. Believing they would be safer in the interior, many abandoned their posts along the walls. As others followed suit, a critical portion of the city's defenses was left exposed. At dawn on December 12th, Crusader forces scaled the now vacant walls and poured into the city. Once inside, they launched a massacre that, according to both Muslim and Crusader sources, lasted for up to 3 days. Ibn al-Athir wrote that over 100,000 were killed, a figure likely exaggerated but reflective of the scale of brutality. Raymond and Bohemond clashed over control of the city. Although Raymond's forces had taken significant parts of Ma'ara, Bohemond seized the majority of the plunder. The Crusader army remained in the city until mid-January 1099, regrouping and provisioning for their march toward Jerusalem. Following the successful Siege of Antioch in June 1098, the crusading army found itself weakened by disease, casualties, and political divisions. The Byzantine Emperor Alexios had expected the Crusaders to return Antioch to imperial control, but Bohemond of Taranto claimed the city for himself, creating a deep rift with Raymond IV, Count of Toulouse, and other crusading leaders. By late 1098, frustrated by the internal quarrels, Raymond IV led an attack on the fortress of Ma'arat al-Numan in November, seizing the city in December after a brutal siege. The subsequent winter delay caused widespread frustration among the Crusaders, who were determined to press on toward Jerusalem with or without their noble leaders. Finally, on January 13th, 1099, Raymond set out southward, taking the coastal route along the Mediterranean. He was accompanied by Robert of Normandy and Tancred, though other leaders such as Godfrey and Robert of Flanders chose to proceed separately, eventually joining the main force near Acre. Bohemond, focused on consolidating his rule over Antioch, withdrew from the Jerusalem campaign altogether. The march south encountered little resistance, as many local Muslim rulers were wary of provoking the Crusaders and opted to pay tribute to avoid conflict. Raymond besieged the city of Acre in February, hoping to intimidate local emirs and secure additional wealth. Despite delays at Acre, the main body of the crusading army regrouped by the spring of 1099. Meanwhile, the Fatimid governor of Jerusalem, Iftikhar al-Dawla, well aware of the approaching Crusader host, took decisive measures to fortify the city's defenses. He expelled the Christian population from Jerusalem and called in reinforcements from Egypt, even poisoning the well around. By early June 1099, after 3 years since the Council of Clermont, the combined Crusader forces reached the outskirts of Jerusalem. After only 1 week of siege, Duke Godfrey of Bouillon attacked the northern walls, while Count Raymond of Toulouse from the southern section. Initial assaults failed due to the strong defenses, lack of siege engines. Driven by desperation and rumors of a Fatimid relief army, the Crusaders intensified their efforts after Genoese ships arrived at Jaffa, providing materials. They constructed 2 siege towers, a battering ram with an ironclad head, and numerous scaling ladders. Inspired by a vision, the clergy called for a spiritual renewal. The entire army undertook a 3-day fast, confessed sins, forgave each other. The final assault began on the 13th of July. They faced fierce resistance. Saracens on the walls rained down arrows. Crusader mantlets and the siege tower itself were repeatedly set ablaze. Despite heavy losses and exhaustion, the assault continued relentlessly through the day and night. Raymond's forces also faced fierce resistance and terrible losses. Recognizing the stalemate on the northern front, the Crusaders made a daring decision. Under cover of darkness, they disassembled their siege tower and moved it almost a mile eastwards to a less fortified section of the northern wall. This Herculean effort, completed by dawn on July 15th, astonished both the Crusaders and the defenders. Saracens rushed to reinforce this newly threatened sector. Godfrey's siege tower was rolled into place. Crusader archers unleashed volleys of firebrands onto the defenders manning the ramparts opposite the tower. Around midday, the crucial moment arrived. From the siege tower, Godfrey broke down the defense and the Crusaders entered into city streets. Panic spread among the defenders. Raymond's forces on the southern front, who had been locked in a bitter struggle, saw the Frankish banners appearing on the northern walls and heard the cries of triumph. Raymond rallied his men, shouting, "Why do you loiter? Lo, the Franks are even now within the city." This spurred a final desperate push. Seeing the city lost, Iftikhar ad-Dawla surrendered the Tower of David to Raymond and escaped. What followed was a horrific massacre, vividly described by the chroniclers. Gesta Francorum. When the pagans had been overcome, our men seized great numbers, both men and women, either killing them or keeping them captive, as they wished. Later, they cast all the Saracen dead outside because of the great stench. Funeral pyres were formed from them like pyramids. Tancred reportedly offered protection to some Muslims sheltering on the roof of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, raising his banner over them. However, once the initial frenzy subsided, these survivors were also slaughtered by other Crusaders who overran the area. By the afternoon of July 15, 1099, Jerusalem was in Crusader hands. In the following days, the leaders elected Godfrey of Bouillon as the secular ruler. The Muslim holy sites on the Temple Mount were swiftly converted into Christian shrines. And the Al-Aqsa Mosque became the Templum Solomones, soon to be the headquarters of the Knights Templar. The news carried swiftly back to Europe.
By the grace of God, those who went forth in the name of our Lord have captured Jerusalem. Thus the holy city has been triumphantly reclaimed. All of Christendom will rejoice, for God's children may now find salvation in the kingdom of heaven.
After the great victory in Jerusalem on the 15th of July, 1099, the Crusaders quickly made a council and elected Godfrey of Bouillon as the defender of the Holy Sepulchre on the 22nd of July. News soon arrived that a vast Fatimid army from Egypt, under the command of Vizier al-Afdal Shahanshah, was marching northward with the intent of recapturing Jerusalem. On 10th August, Godfrey, undeterred by the looming threat, gathered 10,200 men along with the Holy Lance and led them southward from Jerusalem toward Ascalon. The Fatimid force under al-Afdal was numbering around 25,000 men and drawn from a diverse array of ethnic and regional groups: Seljuk Turks, Arabs, Persians, Armenians, and Ethiopians. Despite this, al-Afdal's army lacked siege engines. At dawn on the 12th of August, 1099, the Crusaders moved swiftly to meet the approaching Egyptian army. Scouts had located the Fatimid camp near the fortified port city of Ascalon, and the Crusader leaders wasted no time. Godfrey of Bouillon commanded the left wing, Count Raymond IV of Toulouse took the right, and the centre was led by Robert of Normandy, Robert of Flanders, Tancred, and others. Al-Afdal had been caught off guard, though he attempted to rally his troops near Ascalon. Morale in the Fatimid ranks began to crack even before swords were drawn. As battle commenced, arrow volleys darkened the skies, exchanged between the two armies. Intense hand-to-hand combat erupted. Ethiopian troops in Fatimid service launched a fierce assault against the Crusader centre. Meanwhile, the Fatimid vanguard managed to outflank the rear of the Christian host, momentarily surrounding part of the Crusader army. However, Godfrey quickly redirected his forces, broke the encirclement, and launched a decisive flank attack on the Ethiopian column, crushing the counter-offensive. Despite having the advantage in numbers, al-Afdal's forces lacked coordination and battlefield experience. Meanwhile, Robert of Normandy's cavalry charge shattered the Fatimid centre, triggering a full-scale rout. The retreat turned into chaos, Some Fatimids fled to the sea, where Raymond of Toulouse pursued them relentlessly. Others sought refuge behind the walls of Ascalon, while many were slain in the panicked crush or while climbing trees in a desperate attempt to escape. According to some accounts, the Crusaders used arrows to kill those hiding in the branches. The Fatimid camp was abandoned in haste. Al-Afdal fled, leaving behind immense treasures, supplies, weapons, and banners which were quickly seized. The Crusader casualties remain unknown, but Fatimid losses were devastating, with estimates of 10,000 to 12,000 dead, including local militia from Ascalon. Although the Battle of Ascalon was a Crusader victory, the city itself remained under Fatimid control, and it was eventually re-garrisoned. It became the base of operations for invasions of the Kingdom of Jerusalem every year afterwards, and numerous battles were fought there in the following years until 1153, when it was finally captured by the Crusaders. After nearly 4 years of war, the First Crusade had come to its end. A long and harrowing journey marked by blood, hardship, and unwavering faith claimed the lives of many who never returned home. Yet the Crusaders had achieved the unthinkable, the capture of Jerusalem, the Holy City.